The Sunset Strip Diaries, Chapter 6, The Tattoo Shop. I studied Rock City news with a hunger. Soon, I knew what I should look like, what crowd I should try and break into, and the spots in which I should be seen if I ever had the chance. I knew the names of the clubs, the bands who were in rotation, and who was up and coming. I knew the labels of the clothing I should be wearing, and the stores in which I should be shopping. I had a pretty clear picture of what I was going for. I also knew it was not going to be easy to make it into a scene so obscure and so based on a coolness factor. I knew good looks were always welcome, so I could be on the fringe at the very least. But it was clear you had to have more to hang out with the big dogs. You had to be kind of a name. I wished I could meet some Hollywood people so I could just tag along with them when they went out, but it was very rare to run into somebody from that crowd outside of Hollywood. And I knew I was very far from getting a car of my own and driving there myself. I was sitting around and waiting. I would lie on my bed and look out the window while listening to Hanoi Rocks, Jet Boy, and Rocks Gang records, daydreaming about the Sunset Strip. I always had on men's boxers and my cut-up Faster Pussycat t-shirt. My room was jam-packed with pictures of all the bands I liked. There were stacks of tapes and records, of course the bins of makeup and those perfume bottles shaped like an exclamation point, and random pins and stickers all over the place. I don't think I had made my bed once since we moved into my grandma's. I'm pretty sure I just crawled under a pile of clothes and went to sleep each night. It was the beginning of 1990 when I saw a real live Hollywood guy in Canoga Park. I nearly shit my polka dot biker shorts. I was tripping over myself because I knew I had to act and act fast. I could not pass up my ticket to Hollywood, my ticket out of misery in the valley. I originally saw him in a fast food parking lot, and I knew right away he was from Hollywood. Long-dyed black hair, tattoos, combat boots, and lip service clothing. Ding, 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 we have a winner. I watched him get into his car that had a cartoon skull painted on the doors. Then I saw something that made my heart skip a beat, his bumper sticker. I knew that bright pink script on the black background. It meant none other than Ricky Rackman's world-famous cat house, located in Hollywood. It was frequented by Guns N' Roses, Faster Pussycat, L.A. Guns, and many other rock stars and beautiful women. The guy had access to the cat house? I had been reading about it in magazines since I was 14. I never thought I would meet somebody who went there. I started sweating. I wanted desperately to talk to him, but he was getting in his car to leave. I couldn't make my feet run over there and act like a fool. I was mad at myself. How was I ever going to get to Hollywood? A few months later, I was coming home from school on that hateful bus. I looked out the window at a stoplight and I saw something that intrigued me. It was a little tattoo shop. Tattoos were very Hollywood. I was not discouraged by my unfavorable dealings with Casey, who I met because I saw his tattoo shop bumper sticker. Well, tattoos were a symbol of rock and roll, of rebellion, of guts. I knew I had a higher chance of meeting a Hollywood guy in a tattoo shop than pretty much anywhere else in my town. It was either that or I would be walking into a room of Hell's Angels or Marines. I decided to check it out one day. I wanted to take action. I needed to do this. I got off the bus before my usual stop and crossed the street toward the tattoo shop. It felt thrilling and dangerous. It felt badass. It felt adult. When I walked in, the first thing I saw was a black-haired tattoo artist working on someone's arm. He looked up and I recognized him as none other than the guy from the parking lot. I couldn't believe my luck. I could hardly breathe. I left the store after barely looking through a few racks of assless chaps. My heart was pounding. I got back on the bus to go home. I had to make sure I came back. I had to meet that hot tattoo guy and get my ticket to Hollywood, the town where I belonged. But what would my reason be for going back? I had no business at a tattoo shop. Unless I needed a tattoo. I know, I was lame. And don't ask me how I got money for a tattoo because I can't even remember. I just know that in March of 1990, I went back to that tattoo shop with balls of steel. I thought, all right, I'm not going to blow this. My ticket to freedom is in this shop. My new life could start because of this shop. There is a hot guy in there, and I could flirt with him and get to go to Hollywood. I had to make this happen, you guys. So I waited for a day that I felt pretty. I think that was a day that I just liked my makeup application and or hairstyling and outfit. I was nervous all day at school thinking about getting a tattoo in front of the hot guy. What if he wasn't even there? What if he was there and I cried in front of him because the tattoo hurt? What if I were too nervous after getting my tattoo to talk to him about Hollywood? I'd be stuck with the tattoo and nothing to show for it. What if he had a girlfriend? Well, after school I took a deep breath. I got off that sweaty, smelly, crowded bus in the crisp March air. I entered the shop hearing LA guns blaring. My favorite band playing there, right there. It was a sign. I couldn't believe somewhere else in my neighborhood was playing that music, as they were not as mainstream as other bands. My adrenaline was pumping very strong. I wanted to drop to the floor and do a few push-ups and jump back up. I was greeted by the parking lot guy. He had bright, electric blue eyes. My heart felt like it would just jump out of my chest. He locked eyes with me and I felt weakened, but I made myself continue. I somehow got the words out of my mouth that I wanted a tattoo. Well, he gave me a book of tattoo drawings to look through to decide what I wanted. Oh, I hadn't thought of what I wanted. I couldn't let on that I didn't even care what tattoo it was. I had to pretend I was really there for a tattoo, and if that were true, I would have at least had something in mind. Crap! I pointed to the first feminine thing that I saw, a very plain sketch of a fairy. It was not elaborate, and it didn't even look professional, but it was either that or skulls and flames, so I quickly pretended to be in love with the drawing. But it looked like a drunken fool drew the thing. I drew that myself, he said, introducing himself as Jimmy. I announced that I wanted it on my ankle, over the heart I had carved. He asked me if I were 18, and I said that I was, hoping he didn't want ID. He took my word for it. So there I sat with my ankle in the Hollywood guy's hands. He had rubber gloves on and started to dig into my ankle with a tattoo gun filled with ink. I was never so happy. I know, I was crazy, but an LA Gun song was playing, a couple of cool Hollywood people were in the background, lip service clothes were on racks in front of me, and the tattoo did not even hurt. I don't know if that's because I developed a very high pain tolerance, or the ankle just isn't sensitive, but I remember thinking, what's all this stink about tattoos hurting? People sure are babies. Now, you would think that I ripped a beer can open with my teeth afterward, but I didn't. My euphoria of being tattooed did not end there. Jimmy said, "If I do a good job, can I take you out?" And I'm ashamed to admit my answer, but I will tell you, I said, "You can take me out if you do a bad job." Classy. Jimmy called me a day or two later, and we went on a date. I don't remember where. And we were inseparable from that day on. I spent all of my time with Jimmy, who, despite the long hair and tattoos, had been educated at an upper-crust Catholic private school. It was something he kept secret along with his upper-middle-class upbringing in the suburbs and his former blonde crew cut. He had created a new image for himself, just as I had. He lived in his own apartment, wow, on Coldwater Canyon, and was a graphic artist. He had created many of the ads I looked at in Rock City News and BAM. Tattooing was something he did on the side. He had a picture of Drew Barrymore in his shop getting tattooed near her bikini line. Jimmy was not just a frequenter of the cat house, he was in the inner circle, part of Ricky Rackman's close group of friends. There were always articles and mentions of Ricky in the cat house in magazines, but Ricky was most recognizable from MTV, where he was a host for the rock show Headbangers Ball. I knew his crowd was the in crowd. Axl Rose of Guns N' Roses was one of the cat house members, who reportedly got him the MTV job, as was Tammy Down of Faster Pussycat. There was also a guy named Shannon Hoon, who was in a band called Blind Melon. He was friends with Axl through his sister or something. There was a guy named Tip, a guy named King T, and some other dudes I don't even remember. The members of Ricky's inner circle wore leather jackets with a skull and a cat house logo on the back, as opposed to the t-shirts that were available to the public. You could not just buy one of those jackets they were wearing. They were not for sale. You had to be in that inner circle to get one. After dating Jimmy for a few glorious months, I threw a wrench into my life, and once again it was due to my own impulsive behavior. I got into a venomous fight with my mother, who I still hated with the fire of 1,000 suns. I was still deeply wounded and seething at her for telling me to just go ahead and kill myself, and somehow I wanted to give her a chance to give me a different answer than the one she gave me the time before. So I took a knife and I walked out of the house and I said, "I'm going to kill myself." This is so stupid, guys. I guess I wanted her to chase me and say, "No, no, no, I love you, don't do that." But again, she called the cops on me, remaining bitterly cold. I knew in my heart I would hate her for the rest of my goddamned life. And I did. I remember going into my grandmother's room, lying on the bed, and calling my good friend from Middleton, Todd Lewis, to tell him I was about to be locked up again. He kind of helped me to cool down, and the next thing I knew there was a cop in the doorway and I was about to be dragged back to the psychiatric ward. I thought, shit. I wasn't really going to hurt myself, and I knew the whole thing was going to be a big waste of time and a huge disruption to my life. Most of all, my new relationship. But I was the one who had cried wolf, so I had to deal with what I had started. I asked the cops if I could go to the bathroom first, before I went through the long process of being hauled off, tested for drugs, and put into a holding tank. I really did have to go to the bathroom, and everybody was reluctant about letting me in case I was going to kill myself in there or climb out a window. When I came out, they handcuffed me, put me in the back of the car in front of all the neighbors. I was taken back down to that same hospital to have my freedom taken away again. I was on suicide watch at that hospital, and I was just bored to tears. At first, I shared a big room with 4 girls who were younger than me. I broke down one night in that room, laying on the floor and crying to a staffer named Lori, an anorexic-looking red-headed lady with a Brooklyn accent. She tried her tough love bullshit, which made me cry harder. She was so cold and rude, thinking it was the only way to deal with someone like me. I longed for somebody, anybody, just to put their arms around me, hug me, and tell me they cared about me. I just felt trapped. My mother had used that same tough method with me, and it only hurt me and angered me further. The people in the hospital ward came around with a little tray full of white paper cups that contained various pills for each of us, just like the last time. I never knew what the hell I was taking. We had to take what they gave us because they checked under our tongues to make sure we swallowed everything. It could have been cyanide for Pete's sake, but you had to follow the rules or stay in there even longer. When my mother came to visit once with my sister, I pretended to be very spacey and very, very drugged. I wanted her to feel guilty, to feel bad for handing me over and letting them drug me. I detected the tiniest hint of concern, but nothing came of it. I spent my days doing whatever was asked of me. If you disobeyed, you had to go into seclusion, and if you got physically out of hand, they would strap you down with restraints. I never had that happen to me. I was sure to be well behaved. I got the picture the first time and was not about to stay in there longer than I had to. I had things to do, a life to live, rock stars to meet. Debbie, a chubby, good-natured girl, was restrained one time for just a totally ridiculous reason. She was not even a threat to anyone. She was just a kid. I was so frustrated for her. I knew she was just having personal feelings that she wanted to express, and she couldn't. She had to learn to play by the rules to get out, just as I did. I was soon moved out of the big room with the younger girls and into a small room that had 2 beds, and my roommate was a girl my age named Eden. She had dyed black hair just past her ears and was some sort of punk slash goth slash alternative. The type I would have probably hung out with at school smoking cigarettes. She was really cool. Eden and I used to get up in the huge window overlooking a busy street, take off all of our clothes, and dance in our underwear. Sometimes we put lotion on our butts and stuck them against the glass to make butt prints. We held up colored signs that said, "Hey, we're crazy!" That was one of our thrills, that damn window. One day we were taken to a pool to go swimming. All of the girls were allowed to wear two-piece bikinis except for me. They literally banned me from it. They said it looked too sexual. It made me feel bad and made me feel dirty toward myself. I wasn't even wearing a stripper bikini. It was just some regular store-bought Marshall's thing. Nobody had a chest the size of mine, of course, but that was not my fault. It was just my body. It reinforced the thought that I was kind of just a blatant sex object, even if I didn't want to be, and it kind of just made me feel like anything that happened to me was my own fault just for looking the way that I naturally did. That was kind of the story of my life at the time. Eden and I had a crush on a guy who worked in the ward who was only a few years older than us. Not a crush, but more of a boredom crush. His name was Tad, and he was pretty hot for a guy who wore Dockers and didn't have tattoos. We would summon him, ask him useless questions, and then check out his ass. He was always a little nervous to come into our room, and he managed to remain professional around us. I entertained the thought of trying to seduce him out of having nothing better to do, but I decided I was really into Jimmy. I missed him terribly while I was locked up. One day he called the payphone for me. He said that he had spoken with my mother. She told him I was only 16. I had told him I was 18 when he gave me that tattoo, and I had never corrected myself. I didn't expect to still be dating him. I thought for sure he would have dumped me for the lie, especially since he was 21. But he didn't. Jimmy and I continued dating when I got out of that hospital. I really clung to him and spent a great deal of time with him in his apartment. The cool thing was, he clung back to me. We both seemed to be starved for attention, and we were more than happy to shower it on each other. As the year went on, Jimmy became my first boyfriend, and we entered a serious relationship. He still went out all the time to both the Cat House and Ricky Rackman's other club, Bordello, but I was not afraid of competition. He was smitten with me, and we were just crazy for each other. Looking back on it, it was my first time being in love. Was it comparable to the love I have now as an older person to my husband? Not at all. But for a 16-year-old, it felt very real, and my heart was twisting and turning with every argument or crying spell. Every song reminded me of him, and we were very big into baby talk and romance. It was us against the world. He and his eyeliner, tattoos, and long black hair, and me looking the part of a rock and roll girlfriend with a bikini model's figure, tiny clothes, and of course my tattooed ankle. We were a perfect match. Just my luck, none of the time we spent together was in Hollywood. We hung out at his place on Coldwater Canyon, watching movies, and then he moved to a condo somewhere else where we spent a lot of time by the pool and drinking with friends. We made dinners, and we were just homebodies. Oh, I loved him, so being with him, wherever that was just fine by me. This guy didn't have a dime, which was evident when he made me several dinners of white toast and spaghetti, costing under $3 per dinner. Now, don't get me wrong, it was somehow totally delicious. While I enjoyed most of my time with Jimmy, there was one thing irking me. I desperately wanted to start going to the Cat House with him and his friends, but I was banned from both of Ricky's clubs, Bordello and the Cat House, supposedly because I was underage. Please. This was Hollywood. I knew Jimmy could get me in. I started to become a little bit bitter toward him. He loved me, but he was not about to ruin his standing with the most prestigious crowd in town. None of the guys brought their girlfriends out, and he wasn't about to be the one pussy who brought his girlfriend everywhere. We got in several fights that summer because I felt kind of trapped. I could only go places when he decided to bring me, and he didn't really want to bring me out with him very often, if at all. I couldn't let on just how desperately I wanted to go to Hollywood, so I let it go. I had fallen in love with the guy. I started to hang around my childhood girlfriend Christabel around that time, on days I wasn't with Jimmy. She was 15, a year younger than I, and she wanted to go out and have fun. She had long, thick blonde hair, dark eyes, and an athletic body. She wore well-made clothes, and there was an expensive, powdery scent in the air when she walked by. She lived with her parents in an affluent area of Sherman Oaks, south of Ventura Boulevard. Her parents drove a Mercedes and a BMW and had this gorgeous home that literally overlooked the San Fernando Valley. There was a cobblestone driveway in the front leading up to a very landscaped two-story house full of antiques. There was a formal sitting room, in which we were not allowed to enter, a maid named Louisa, and 2 or 3 white Persian cats and kittens who padded around the slate flooring in the foyer. The backyard had a huge swimming pool and a patio full of white padded lounge chairs. Leaving my rundown neighborhood to come to that house was always like going to an expensive day spa. There was food, beauty products, clothes, every amenity I could think of. But most of all, I was safe. That was the main thing. I felt safe. I felt protected by Christabel's family. If something happened to us, we would be rescued and have a full legal team behind us. When something happened to me at home, I was on my own. You can bet your left tit that if Christabel's gynecologist tried getting fresh with her, there would be a cop arresting that doctor the very next day, and he would pay for what he did. If we got a flat tire, or if someone tried to scam us, or we were abandoned somewhere, we would be saved. Before Jimmy was in my life, I was left places and nobody would come get me. People tried to take anything I did have and did horrible, horrible things to me, but nothing bad would happen to me when I was with Christabel. That was one of the main things I looked for in a friend as the years went on. If a girl came from a solid family, I was very likely to make friends with her. Christabel's room was a cloud of pastels. It was full of designer clothes, perfume bottles, and scented candles. Little fairy and angel trinkets were dotted around the shelves. Pictures were matted and framed on the walls. It was very different from the haphazardly taped magazine pictures on my own walls. Her bedding was always so soft. She had a thick white goose-down duvet, egg foam under the soft sheets, and 6 goose-down pillows. My own bed contained precisely 1 flattened pillow, and it was so old that cavemen probably used the thing. I never slept well as I did as when I was at her house. Next to her bed was a bubbling aquarium that hummed us to sleep at night. There was central air always keeping the place cool in the summer and warm in the winter. It was just heavenly. Her bathroom was my favorite because it had 2 sinks in which we sat to do our makeup. There were thick pink towels, movie star lighting around the mirrors, and lotions in every floral and fruit scent lined up on the shelves. She had expensive makeup that she didn't bat an eyelash at letting me use. I most liked her huge stash of Borghese that she crammed under her sink as if it were garbage. It would have taken me a year of lunch money to save up and buy my own. My favorite products in that bathroom were the glorious conditioners and hair products by Joico. They smelled delicious and were in pale lavender bottles, which you could now get at TJ Maxx, but back then they were gold. She had so many bottles of conditioner in her shower, Nexus, Paul Mitchell, Sorby, KMS. I wanted to try all of them. I felt like a queen getting made up in that bathroom. It was so lovely. I was used to using Infusium 23 in my hair and makeup that I stole from the local Save-On drugstore. None of this salon-quality hair stuff or department store cosmetics. Those things were not even available in my world. I had never set foot in a store that sold things like that. She had a walk-in closet full of clothes and shoes. She sometimes let me borrow this lime green Betsy Johnson top with tons of pink and red cartoonish flowers on it. Oh, I adored that top, and I had a good night whenever I wore it. Wearing Betsy Johnson back then, a real designer who had a shop on Melrose that I could never afford, made me feel pretty and confident. Christabel was just as interested in going Hollywood as I was. She wasn't into the more obscure bands. She was more interested in mainstream bands like Slaughter. I could tell it was going to be a passing fancy with her, because her dedication to the project, as I saw it in my head, just wasn't strong enough. But I didn't give a shit. I needed a partner in crime. Neither of us had cars or could drive, so she decided to beg the only logical person, Jimmy. I acted nonchalant during the begging. It was crucial that I didn't appear too eager. I let her do the dirty work, and I sat back not wanting to ruin my validity with him. I was crossing my fingers she could somehow flatter him into taking us. He finally caved and said, "Okay, I'll take you guys to the Rainbow." I nodded calmly while she screamed and jumped up and down. In my head I thought, the Rainbow? The famous Rainbow Bar and Grill? I wanted to fall back into my bed and kick my feet really fast in the air. I knew from my magazines that there was no other spot that contained so many rock stars per square foot. All of the bands that I loved always referred to it in their magazine interviews. And it was on the Sunset Strip, next door to the Roxy, which was another place I dreamed of going. My plan was in motion, baby.